It is the 11th of the 2nd, 2025. The time is 20 minutes past 8, and there are very many F1 news and update threads at which we need to pull. We will talk about Lindblad talking about Max Verstappen and saying why and how he might be better than one Sir Lewis, Carl, Davidson, Hamilton. Oh, the humanity straight off the bat. So too, there's a chap called Isaac Hajar who echoes that chap's sentiments. But first topic on the docket, I need to talk about the race. Look, let me outline this as follows. I love myself some The Race, one of the go-toest publications, websites and YouTube channels in the F1 space. Okay, so you can question the videos that they put out, just B-roll adjacent to some bloody article that somebody's written so many moons ago. And that's a valid criticism, a critique even. But The Race have always been one of the good ones, right? Scott Mitchell, Malm, Ed Straw, Mark Hughes when he's ready. I even bought tickets to go to their bloody show. Gave them money because I wanted to hobnob with the legend that is Mark Hughes. Usually, lest we forget, was the one that said of Kimi Antonelli that he was 2-3 tenths quicker than anybody else up and down the grid. He's the one who drew bloody Mercedes blueprints and took it to them with a view to understand their split turbo hybrid setup. He is one of the go-tiest ones. And so with that said, I was perturbed today to listen to their very latest iteration when they were talking about the F1 livery launch that's scheduled to happen next week. Controversial because it feels to a certain extent like a commercial venture. You heard Max Verstappen and some of the other drivers say that they can't be bothered to attend that. London 02, only a couple of weeks before the opening stanza of this season. Why would the drivers want to go to that? It's a nothing of an event, a no-sell. Why would you want to go? But apparently it's very popular with F1 fans, sold out in minutes. There will be hundreds, there will be thousands of people there looking to get a sneak peek of their favourite drivers. Lest we forget, all of the cars will be there, cars in inverted commas, of course, and all of the drivers too. So one of the rare times when you get 2 for 1, right? They're all going to be bloody there in one place. And those tickets to that F1 livery launch to celebrate the 75th anniversary of F1. Its starting season, of course, being in 1950. It makes sense, therefore, if you're a big F1, to go and nail it, see all the drivers in one. And I understand it in that sense. To that point, the boys and girls at the race, Ed Straw, Scott Mitchell, man, Ben Hunt, were saying something like this. Matty B, you're a legend. I'm a Max Verstappen super fan, some say. But conversation is really getting pointless as they're great. Just leave it there. I don't hate it, Matty B. I don't hate it, but since Arvid Lindblad has spoken to, we're going to 2. But let me say this, scorched earth settings for Cameron in a second, because I really lost my mind at this. I was listening to the boys and girls at the rate, Ed Straw, Ben Hunt, Scott Mitchell, Mal. They were talking about their F1 livery show and how it's a bit of a sham. There's rules that the guys, Williams are going to have their own launch on their own digital platform, but they can't reveal the livery. They can reveal the bloody car, the shape of it, but not with the proper livery. That's got to wait until the 18th, this time next week. Cool. Perfect. So the guys are talking on this podcast about how it's a bit of a sham, isn't it? Like it's a bit of a false dawn, as is always the way with these F1 events. And then one of them, if I recall correctly, Scott Mitchell Mom says something to this effect, that livery launch is the fodder of bottom feeder F1 websites. Hang on a second. I really like these guys. I enjoy listening to them. Every single podcast I will tune in, waste 60 minutes of my life listening to these. For the most part, there is not a hint of intellectual snobbery, no sense of entitlement since they get the accredited F1 passes. But this time we're name calling, talking about bottom feeder websites. What? How very dare they? You know, this is a sort of nonsense from which I recoil. I hate when these F1 bods get all high and mighty talking about bottom feeder websites, the likes of which have been working all the while in the off-season, mind, while the race have got a gazillion different people to write articles. They are a team, they are funded, they are not independent. So what are we talking about here? How very dare they turn their nose up at inverted comma bottom feeder independent websites? What are they on about? Massive team, bankrolled to the hilt. How very dare they? And I say that all to say this. This is where it gets interesting, because I follow a lot of sportsmen and I pay attention to the way in which these things are moving as far as old versus new media. This is a battle that's been developing over the past couple of years. I'm acutely aware that the UK is, let's say, 10 to 15 years behind North America as far as the way in which we ingest our media. Please see as your Exhibit A, CBS and the way they do their Champions League content. F1 is an additional incremental 5 years behind. So let's say a round number of 20 years behind is what F1 is in the UK as far as its very unique brand of coverage. Zero humour. You guys see the NBA guys, Shaq and Kenny Smith and Ernie, the way they like to have a laugh and a joke. Micah Richards, Kate Abdo, so too Jamie Carragher. You see the way that these guys cover Premier League. It's different, it's fun, it's bright. You tune in to see the presenters more than you even tune in to see the sporting event. However, I say all that to say this: old media is doing one of these and new media is on the up and up. You know why? Because new media has zero cost. See, lights of, I don't know, I'm going to cite a couple of my mates over here: your Tomos, your Tactical Rabs, your Aldases, your Quick Stop F1s, Shez, Baxty, Tyre GP, all those guys can just turn on their camera. It's zero cost. The likes of HBO in America have already wrapped up their coverage of boxing because it didn't pay the bills. Showtime no longer cover pugilism also. Why? Because their cost were too high and ultimately their top line could not offset it. I've said already that we're about 15 to 20 years behind. This is going to happen I promise you at some point, as far as all these mega non-independent F1 houses that cover all things F1 as an example, their time is not going to last. All of those bods like Scott Mitchell, I know some of them are freelance, but all of those bods who freelance for the race, as an example, need to be looking for their jobs in real time. I'm telling you, do not let your CVs gather dust. How very dare you talk about bottom feeder websites? You shouldn't be criticizing them, by the way, because at some point in the very near future, you might need to be under their employ. Techie. I just wanted to get that off my old chest. I wanted to pull the audio so you guys could listen to it, but I couldn't bring myself to listen to the blasphemy again. And they're very good 99% of the time, are the boys and girls at the race. The goatiest, some might say. But that bottom feeder comment didn't sit well with me. Indeed, I was allergic to it, some might say. Go on then, let's talk about Arvid Lindblad. There's a couple of people, in fact, I'm going to tell you about Isaac Hadjar first. Isaac Hadjar had this to say about one Maximilian Verstappen. From my point of view, he's too complete in all conditions. Mentally, he's too strong. After that, I think Hamilton is at the same level in racing. In terms of pace, he's really competitive, but I'd say Maximilian Verstappen is still the most complete, said Isaac Hadjar. That's your Exhibit A. Interesting stuff, right? Although, to a certain extent, if bias is indeed a thing, you're not going to expect Isaac Hadjar to say anything different. However, not long ago, you'll recall, he was asked who his hero was in F1 and he said it will always be Sir Lewis, Carl Davis and Hamilton. I say all that to say this: Arvid Lindblad now has enough points on his super license and will be competing in F1 in an FP1 session at some point in the 2025 season. That matters. Why? Well, because the likes of Lawson, the likes of Isaac Hadjar will need to be looking over their shoulder because they fancy Arvid Lindblad as the next one, the next Maximilian Verstappen or the next Sir Lewis Hamilton. Because in F1, history doesn't repeat, but sometimes it does rhyme. You'll know that Helmut Marko has said what they want to find the next champion, not necessarily the next Maximilian Verstappen, because that would be an unreasonable, no, unfeasible pursuit, an exercise in futility per se. However, connect the dots, similarity settings. Arvid Lindblad went straight up to Lando Norris and looked him in his face and said, I want you to remember me. I want you to remember this countenance because you will see me in 5 years' time. The cojones on that Arvid Lindblad, reminiscent of a young, hungry lion in Maximilian Verstappen, though. So too, if we look at some of their performances, their landmark ones, you'll recall F3 European Championships 2014, the Norris Ring. This is when Max Verstappen caught the eye of one Helmut Marko. So much quicker was he than the rest of the field that day in changeable conditions. And some say that the ability to drive changeable conditions and monsoon conditions is a true signifier of potential greatness in the offing. Arvid Lindblad, fast forward to 2024, and he put down a similar performance in Silverstone, winning both the sprint and the feature race. Changeable conditions again, right? Coming from behind, etc. People connected the dots and said, is that Arvid Lindblad that day, or is that Maximilian Verstappen of 2016 or 2014 in the Norris Ring? Again, similarities. So too, here's your Exhibit C. Helmut Marko's talked about Arvid Lindblad's ability at a very young age to sit down and have a conversation and hold court with people much more senior than him. You'll recall too that Helmut Marko said similar about one Maximilian Verstappen when he was on the precipice of signing for the Bulls that are red. He held court with who? None other than Red Bull founder Dietrich Mateschitz. We're connecting the dots here. Suffice to say that F1 history does not repeat, but sometimes it does rhyme. While they might not be looking necessarily for the next Maximilian Verstappen, in Arvid Lindblad, some say Helmut Marko, Dr. Helmut Marko of Red Bull GmbH, might already have found him. And I say all that to say this. Here's what Arvid Lindblad has said. He went on a podcast, the Inside Line F1 podcast, and spoke about the differences between Maximilian Verstappen and one Sir Lewis, of course, Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. Excuse me. Roll the clip.
Hearing that from a driver himself, what do you find different or special about Max and Lewis in their own ways?
Even for me, I mean, it's hard to really compare the two because I think they're at very different stages of their career and they're very different drivers. I mean, Lewis, I don't think anyone can really doubt his talent. What he's been able to achieve has been remarkable, and he'll always be known as one of the greats of the sport. Max is maybe now he's not up and coming, but he's still very young, and I think he's just extremely impressive. It seems like whatever he does, whatever he gets in, whatever situation he's put in, he's able to make the best of it and just be extremely fast. I mean, yeah, I think the best way to describe Max is at the moment he seems to have no weaknesses, and he's just he's just a bit better than everyone else.
I don't hate it. Now, of course, Arvid, as being part of the Red Bull Junior program, is incentivized to say that now, but I can't disagree. Using an evidence-based, non-unreasoned argument, I think he's onto something. Max is really, really good right now. It's nickel and diming to compare him to Sir Lewis Hamilton and to say which one's the goatiest of the two. But I listen, I want to desperately have a fight and play devil's advocate, but I do not disagree with the sentiment. Roll the second clip.
He'll tell you two drivers' names and you have to choose which one.
Which one's better? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Norris or Leclerc?
Leclerc.
Leclerc or Piastri?
Leclerc.
Leclerc or Sainz?
Leclerc.
Leclerc or Alonso? He's taking that. He's
This is
taking
not
that.
rapid fire, is it? Let's just say Alonso.
Alonso, okay. Alonso or Vettel? Taking a tough
Vettel.
one. Vettel. Vettel or Verstappen?
Verstappen.
Verstappen or Schumacher?
Verstappen.
Verstappen or Hamilton?
Verstappen.
Verstappen. Lovely.
That's more like it.
Simply lovely.
We're going to...
Oh, the humanity. Verstappen over Hamilton. This is going to be an argument that's going to ensue in barbershops between now and the end of time, right? Who's better? Sir Lewis, 7-time champion. Do you value length of service and tenure, accolades, the frequency as multitudinous as they are for Sir Lewis? Or do you value how bright somebody's flame has been burning? Do you value recency? What's happened of late? Do you disadvantage Lewis as far as his judgment because of his performances against King George Russell of Kingsley in Norfolk? Or is that me just falling foul of recency bias? Because for the avoidance of doubt, what we'll never ever do on this channel is sacrifice truth and objectivity at the altar of partisanship or recency and or partisanship. Red Bull fanboy potentially. Troy says, first time I'm seeing Antonelli talk. Is that Antonelli, Troy, or is that Arvid Lindblad? You're a joke. He's become more vociferous though as Antonelli, and it's interesting. I think that we're going to be having a conversation. Who do you guys think, as we round third base, who do you guys think is the next one? Kimi Antonelli or Arvid Lindblad? I'm starting to lean more towards Arvid Lindblad, particularly as we discuss the similarities between his career trajectory and that of Maximilian Verstappen. Lest we forget, he's got records, has he not? Bloody all of the F3 records. Youngest F3 race winner. Highest F3 win percentage. He's got a few others and I've written them all down lest I forget. Youngest F3 race winner. Highest F3 win percentage, tied for the most wins in a single season. At the age of 16 years old, he was in an F1 car. This feels like they're expediting for his learning curve in real time, setting himself up to be the next Maximilian Verstappen. Maybe. I don't know. It's techier than techie things. Jay, member 6 months. Forgive my anger. No, you guys are legends. I'm telling you. Apologies. Can behave yourself, Troy. For what are you apologising? That's Lindblad. Yeah. No, that's Lindblad. No need to apologise. I didn't get the message though. Lindblad really thinks Max is better, and he is correct. Oh, it's techie. Okay, here's what I'll end on. Bookend the conversation this way. I don't think it's fair on Lewis to compare a 40-year-old Lewis Hamilton against a 27-year-old Max Verstappen, whose missus, by the way, apparently was spotted buying girls' baby clothes. Take that to mean whatever you will. That I say all that to say this. The comparison proper, if you're doing apples versus apples, will be this. Why don't we take a 27-year-old Sir Lewis Hamilton, a fire-breathing dragon of an F1 peddler, if ever I've seen one, and put him in a car against Max Verstappen. How about you take 2007 fearless Lewis Hamilton round the outside, turn one, lap one on Fernando Alonso, two-time champion, by the way. Oh, and by the way, if I was going to question Arvid Lindblad's judgment, it wouldn't be the Max or Sir Lewis thing, because you can argue that either way, depending on which side of the bed you've woken up on that morning. What I'd question him on, how very dare this dude choose Sebastian Vettel over Fernando Alonso. I mean, that's the tech. That's why it's techier than techie things. I cannot have that. Fernando no. My blood pressure is going to rate. There is no way in a month of Sundays that Sebastian Vettel is a better racing driver than Fernando Alonso, man from Oviedo, Asturias. I do not think so. Do you think that Sebastian Vettel could have vanquished off into the distance one Michael Schumacher? Sent that chap into retirement? No, I'm not having it. A fire-breathing dragon when Michael Schumacher was in his pomp 2005, 2006 settings. What are we doing, Arvid? In fact, you got to revoke his pimp card, his F1 pimp card for such an egregious characterization. That one he's got wrong. We can argue back and forth about the Max versus Lewis one. And we will argue back and forth, particularly as we head into 2025 proper. For the avoidance of doubt, look, F1 livery launch will be next week, and I will desperately try and stream it, even though I think it's going to be a nothing event. For the avoidance of doubt too, before then, you will have an official Williams car launch, potentially. In that car launch, you will see techie livery. It won't be what they're racing. It will look different in Australia. So too, it will look different in testing. But it will all be, I don't know, I can't wait. It's going to be a very exciting couple of weeks for all things concerning Formula 1. Who cares what Lindblad says? Let's see how he does in F2. Let's have that conversation in a couple of years' time, Miami. I promise you. Walther, always don't be daft, Walther, as long as you join. Better late than never. A bit short-sighted, that opinion. Schumi ended his career when he did. 1 year later, and Vettel would have. I don't know about all of that, Jay. I don't know. I just don't. I don't rate Sebastian Vettel. Listen, he won 4 championships, but can you say car merchant? I mean, as soon as he jumped out of that car that was perfect for him, with that weird blown off exhaust fume madness, do you know what I mean? Having the rear end float around him and super front note. As soon as he left that car, he was never the same chap. He was one of those who it was a rare symbiosis, a perfect concoction of Sebastian Vettel and that Adrian Newey Red Bull. The second that he left that car, that team, it wasn't the same. He wasn't the same. He was never the 4-time champion again. That dude had gone. Aston Martin, he was never the same. Scuderia Ferrari never got the proper 4-time champion Vettel because that dude was gone. Meanwhile, Fernando El Plan Alonso still cracks on though. It's techier than techie things. Anyway, listen, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to run. You guys have been legends. Between now and next time, as always, remember to look, but never stare.